Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into the top 10 countries that might stand against India and back the United States, especially after US President Donald Trump hit India with an extra 25% tariff for buying Russian oil, pushing it to 50% total. Trump called out India for not caring about the deaths in Ukraine from Russia's attacks. This tariff shows the US is tough on nations helping Russia's economy during the war, and since India keeps buying cheap Russian oil, some countries side with the US view that it's wrong. These countries often criticize India's neutral stance on the Ukraine war and want everyone to stop funding Russia. We'll count down from 10 to 1, explaining why each might oppose India's policy and support the US. Stick around till the end for the number 1 pick. Like, if this interests you, subscribe for more global news breakdowns and turn on notifications. Let's jump in. Number 10, Lithuania. Lithuania would likely stand against India and favor the US because they're super against Russia and see India's oil buys as helping the enemy. As a small Baltic country next to Russia, Lithuania has been hit hard by Russian threats before, like energy cutoffs and cyber attacks. They joined NATO for protection and push hard for tough sanctions on Russia since the Ukraine war started. Lithuania criticized countries like India for staying neutral and buying discounted Russian oil, saying it funds Putin's war machine that kills innocents in Ukraine. Their foreign minister called out big nations for profiting from blood oil. With the US leading the charge against Russia, Lithuania backs American moves fully, including tariffs on India to pressure them to stop. They've hosted US troops and joined exercises to show unity. If things escalate, Lithuania could rally EU friends to support US tariffs, maybe even push for more sanctions on Indian firms dealing with Russia. They're not direct rivals with India, but on this issue, security trumps trade. Lithuania buys no Russian oil now and urges others to follow. This stance keeps them safe and aligned with powerful allies like the US. Number 9, Estonia. Estonia might oppose India and support the US due to their hatred for Russian actions and view of India's oil purchases as indirect war support. Estonia, another Baltic nation, suffered under Soviet rule and fears Russia might invade next, like Ukraine. They've cut all ties with Russia, banning their energy and pushing digital defenses against hacks. Estonia slammed India for abstaining in UN votes against Russia and ramping up oil imports, with their PM saying neutral countries are complicit in aggression. They see the US as their top protector through NATO, hosting American forces and backing US policies like tariffs on India. Estonia even suggested global boycotts on nations funding Russia. In response to Trump's 50% tariff on India, Estonia would cheer it as a bold step to isolate Russia economically. They'd offer intel sharing or cyber help to the US if needed. Trade with India is tiny, so no loss there. This position strengthens Estonia's security and shows solidarity with Ukraine. They're vocal in EU to make sure everyone pressures India to change. Number 8, Latvia. Latvia could be against India and favor the US because of deep anti-Russian feelings and criticism of India's role in boosting Moscow's cash from oil. Latvia, the third Baltic state, has Russian-speaking minorities and worries about invasion, so they've militarized fast with US help. They condemned India's neutral stance on Ukraine, calling oil deals immoral while people die. Latvian leaders urged the world to shun Russian energy completely and hit enablers like India with penalties. As NATO members, they rely on US weapons and training, so they support Trump's tariff hike to 50% on India as a way to hurt Russia's war funding. Latvia has no Russian oil imports and pushes EU bans that indirectly affect India. If conflict grows, they'd provide bases or logistics for US ops. Trade ties with India are weak, but standing with the US keeps Latvia safe from threats. This alignment echoes their history of fighting Soviet control and supports Ukraine fully. They'd lobby for more global pressure on India to align with the West. Number 7, Poland. Poland would stand against India and back the US over strong support for Ukraine and anger at India's Russian oil buys. Poland shares a border with Ukraine and has taken in millions of refugees since the war, losing lives to stray missiles too. They've armed Ukraine heavily and criticized India for not condemning Russia, saying cheap oil purchases prolong the suffering. Polish PM called it hypocritical for a democracy like India to fund autocrats. As a key NATO ally, Poland hosts US troops and nukes, fully endorsing Trump's 50% tariff on India to force a policy shift. They've pushed EU sanctions that target Indian refiners using Russian crude. In a bigger standoff, Poland could send aid or fighters alongside the US, Trade with India exists in tech, but Ukraine's fight is priority. This stance honors Poland's history of resisting Russia and strengthens ties with America for protection. They'd rally Eastern Europe to support US moves against India's neutrality. Number 6. Germany. Germany might oppose India and favor the US because they've ditched Russian energy and see India's imports as undermining sanctions. Germany was hooked on Russian gas but cut it after the Ukraine invasion, facing high costs to help Kyiv. They've criticized India's booming oil trade with Russia, with their chancellor saying it weakens global efforts to starve Russia's war budget. Germany leads EU aid to Ukraine and backs US tariffs like the 50% on India as necessary pressure. As economic powerhouses, they share tech ties with the US and join in condemning neutral stances. Germany has sanctioned Russian-owned firms in India indirectly. If escalated, they'd provide weapons or funds via US-led coalitions. Trade with India is big in cars and machines, but principles win. This position rebuilds Germany's image post-Nord Stream and aligns with NATO goals. They'd push for talks where India joins anti-Russia camp, favoring US leadership. Number 5. France. France could be against India and support the US due to their anti-Russia stance in Europe and criticism of India's oil deals funding the war. France supplies Ukraine with tanks and missiles, viewing Russia's invasion as a threat to all. They've called out India for abstaining in UN votes and buying record Russian crude, with Macron saying it contradicts shared democratic values. France backs EU bans on refined Russian oil from India and supports Trump's 50% tariff to unify pressure. As a nuclear power and UN member, they work closely with the US in NATO, selling weapons to allies. France has defense deals with India but prioritizes Ukraine now. In conflict, they'd send Navy or air support with the US. Trade involves planes and luxury, but security first. This echoes France's history of leading against aggressors and strengthens transatlantic bonds. They'd mediate but favor US in pushing India to stop Russian ties. Number 4. Canada. Canada would likely stand against India and favor the US over shared values and disapproval of India's Russian oil purchases. Canada has sanctioned Russia hard, sending aid to Ukraine and hosting refugees. They've criticized India's neutrality, with Trudeau saying oil buys help fund atrocities. Canada follows US lead on global issues, supporting the 50% tariff on India as a wake-up call. As G7 members, they share intel via Five Eyes and join in condemning enablers of Russia. Canada has no Russian energy imports and urges others to quit. If things heat up, they'd offer troops or planes alongside the US, like in past wars. Ties with India strained over Sikh issues, making this easier. Trade is in resources, but alliances matter more. This position upholds Canada's human rights focus and tightens US partnership for Arctic security. They'd push multilateral forums to isolate India's policy. Number 3. United Kingdom. The United Kingdom might oppose India and back the US because of strong anti-Russia policies and views on India's oil imports as war financing. The UK has armed Ukraine extensively and frozen Russian assets, criticizing India's UN abstentions and energy deals. Their PM called it disappointing for a Commonwealth friend to boost Russia's economy. The UK aligns with US tariffs like the 50% on India, seeing it as essential to end the war. Through AUKUS and Five Eyes, they cooperate deeply with America on security. The UK banned Russian oil early and pushes global caps. In escalation, they'd deploy carriers or special forces with the US. Historical ties with India exist, but Ukraine's crisis overrides. Trade involves finance and curry, but principles guide. This stance continues UK's post-Brexit role as US ally against autocrats. They'd advocate for India to join Western sanctions fully. Number 2. Australia. Australia could be against India and favor the US due to alliances and criticism of India's Russian connections amid Ukraine support. Australia sends weapons to Kyiv and sanctioned Russia, slamming India's oil surge as unethical. Their PM urged all democracies to unite against aggression. As Quad partners with India, but closer to US via AUKUS, they back Trump's 50% tariff to pressure change. Australia relies on US for subs and defense against China, so aligns on Russia too. They've stopped Russian energy and joined US exercises. If conflicted, they'd provide bases or intel to America. Trade with India in coal, but security first. This echoes Australia's W1 twist loyalty to allies and counters regional threats. They'd work to mend Quad but favor US in this rift over Russia. Number 1. Ukraine. Ukraine tops the list as the country most against India and favoring the US, since they're directly hurt by Russia's war funded partly by Indian oil buys. Ukraine fights for survival, losing cities and lives, and blasts India for neutrality and massive Russian crude imports. Zelensky called Modi's Moscow visit a blow to peace after a hospital strike. Ukraine's FM said India's profits come from Ukrainian blood and urged rethinking Soviet ties. They rely on US arms like HIMARS to fight back, fully supporting tariffs on India to cut Russia's cash. Ukraine has no power to tariff, but lobbies allies to pressure India. If war ends, they'd rebuild with US help over Russian. Ties with India were okay, but war changed it. This stance is about justice and stopping aggression that threatens them daily. They'd welcome US as savior and push for global isolation of Russia's enablers like India. That's the countdown. Hope this gave you insight into global tensions. Like, if you agree with the list, subscribe for more and comment your thoughts. Thanks for watching.